So, The Warrior in the Garden is a story where a master and his student are discussing training in martial arts. Now, specifically, the master's training his student for battle, and he's training him in the art of the sword. And while he's training him, he's also telling him that he should be living a life that is peaceful, that is tranquil, that he should enjoy the beauty of the world, to enjoy the little moments with his family, with his loved ones, with his friends. And the student is confused by this. He says, "Master, you're training me on how to fight. You're training me on how to succeed in battle. And yet you're also telling me to live a life of peace. How do you reconcile these two?" And the master looks at him and he says, "Because it's better to live as a warrior in a garden rather than a gardener in a war." And this particular notion is a lot of what Zen Stoicism is based on. Now, the thing is, when you think about this idea, many people, they will hear the warrior in the garden, and a lot of people will be drawn to the warrior part, the part that sounds cool, the part that makes you sound tough. And this is something actually that I used to look at it as. I always would leave out the second part, which is the garden. Now, the garden is the part of it where the garden represents your ideals in life. The warrior represents you and the training of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally to be able to weather the inevitable storms of life. The thing is, one thing that we all have in common is despite that we have these individual subjective experiences, we all have to carry the existential burden of life, as Jordan Peterson would say. And this is something that is incredibly daunting to us all because a lot of the time we still don't understand why we're here. We still don't understand what we're doing here or what our life is supposed to be. And at times we think we know, we think we have some certainty over it, but then at other times it seems to weigh down on us in an incredibly heavy way. And the way to combat that is to build ourselves up into a person that we would be proud of, a person that can handle these things, a person who is credible, who is pursuing a life of meaning. And that is what it means to be the warrior in the Warrior in the Garden phrasing. That warrior is you training yourself to be prepared for the inevitable battles and storms of life. Whereas the garden represents your ideals. It represents the beauty in your life, the things that you love, the things that you cherish, whether that's the people that you love in your life. It could be your hobbies and passions. It could be your work. It could be everything that you surround yourself with. You could look at the garden as the physical manifestation of your ideals, the things that you bring into your life as your surrounding environment. And that surrounding environment is a reflection of your internal world. So as the warrior in the garden, we train ourselves for the inevitable battles and storms while also being able to enjoy life as it is, to really take in all these experiences, to be grateful for them, to see the beauty in these experiences, and to not let ourselves become jaded by the very fact that life can be a sad or dismal thing sometimes, right? There is the temporary nature of life. Things end. It is impermanent. It is fragile. Like, we are not invincible. We can be hurt. We can be broken physically. Sometimes mentally and emotionally we can feel broken. The idea of being the warrior, though, is to build a system of thinking and being where you're not only intelligent, but also emotionally fit to deal with these things. And the whole idea of Zen Stoicism, the whole reason why it came to be, is for myself, in once upon a time feeling like the gardener in the war, feeling unprepared for the inevitable storms that life had brought my way. It began with my mother when she passed away when I was 7 years old. And we've talked about this in other episodes in the podcast, but if this is the first time that you're listening to this, this was my first experience of being the gardener in the war. Right, I was in my garden, so to speak, my proverbial garden, where everything was beautiful, everything was nice. There was not a care in the world, and I had an amazing mother, an amazing family, everything I could want as a kid. I had a really nice childhood growing up, but when she passed away, I suddenly learned very quickly in a very real way that life wasn't fair, that there were going to be these injustices. Not only that life wasn't fair, but that it was fragile, right? Even a person as strong as my mom, as healthy as my mom, was able to get sick, in these circumstances despite doing the right things. And also the impermanence of her life being that, one moment I had her in my life and the next moment I didn't. So I found myself as this gardener at war, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle myself in this particular situation. And I remember suffering and being in misery with myself internally. Right? I didn't really always show this outside. I wasn't really like a sad or depressed kid or anything like that. But internally, it seemed like a world of darkness all the time because I felt like life wasn't fair. I felt like this was happening to me. And the thing that began to change it is referencing something that I was saying before, which is asking myself the question, well, what was the gift here? What was the gift here? And seeing that as a gift. And that began to turn my mind around. But the experience itself is what caused me to want to train myself physically, mentally, emotionally, to be the strongest version of who I could be, to be a person who's capable, a person who is articulate of explaining their emotions and understanding them and being able to deal with them, not just push them down. Because for years I'd push them down, I'd stuff them down. And when you do that, in our warrior in the garden metaphor, it's basically like you're taking garbage and burying it in your garden. Eventually that's going to have an adverse effect on the flowers and the plants and the fruit trees and whatever you have planted in there. So the whole idea here was that I was stuffing down my emotions. I didn't know how to handle them. I felt like a victim. I felt completely vulnerable by this experience, and it shaped the way that I started to live my life. So I remember, I got into training martial arts, and I still do to this day, to train myself physically for any inevitable battles that could come out. But I also began reading a lot. I'm always listening to a book or reading a book and learning about myself and reflecting on myself, and also reflecting upon my emotions. Because what this does is it trains the warrior within to be able to weather those storms, to be able to engage in those battles without just falling flat and crumbling under life's toughest circumstances. So that is the part that had inspired me to be that warrior. But at the same time, what I needed to realize is that I didn't want to be the warrior in a desert or in a barren land. Part of sustaining that ability to keep going, to keep training, to keep holding or to keep being able to bear the existential burden is also having ideals or compelling visions for what you want to experience in life, things that really mean something to you. And having a compelling vision is key, because the warrior with nothing to fight for, with nothing to protect, simply begins to lose themselves in that. There is no purpose there. So what you do is you build your garden, you build your ideals with this, and you do so by thinking to yourself, what is most important to me in life? What do I care about most? Who do I love most? Who do I want to be spending my time with? And what do I want to be doing? And in that, you begin to build that garden. You begin to build that sense of ideals, that environment, while also knowing at the same time that at any moment in life, that can all be taken away. And that is where we utilize the Stoic notion of memento mori, the Stoic practice of memento mori, where we think to ourselves, this can all be taken, so this is what gives this beauty, this is what gives this ultimate meaning, is because something isn't really meaningful unless its loss would be significant to you. If its loss would be, just something that you could brush off, it's not very meaningful. Now, that's not to say that this is a negative or a bad thing, but this is to say that if you regard it as truly meaningful, it's important to remember that at any moment it can be lost. And the way that you train yourself to be able to deal with that loss is by consistently training your character, training that warrior within, examining your character, reflecting back on your decisions, your intentions, why you're doing certain things, and allowing yourself to learn. Because in this individual experience, it can be very difficult to learn from it all the time, because again, in the subjective individual view, the egoic view, it feels sometimes like everything is happening to us, and our emotions can catch us. Even though I practice this every single day, my emotions still grab a hold of me. My emotions will still take me down these weird paths that I need to explore and reflect upon so that I don't get caught up in them, so that they don't destroy me. And thankfully, I've built this system of thinking through Zen Stoicism where I'm able to actually deal with it. So